What did Donald Trump inherit? He inherited a bull market from Joe Biden. Donald Trump is the only one to take a bull market and turn it into a bear market to such a degree that we're having a drop of 5% or more at this point. This is historically unprecedented. What Donald Trump, one man, it seems to me, has done.
As Donald Trump single-handedly destroys the American and perhaps global economies, he just got hit with nightmare news. A devastating poll, the worst of his second term, which once again proves that the American people are not happy with the Trump administration. They're pissed off at his economic mismanagement, and he has had the shortest honeymoon period of any president in history. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. This is absolutely brutal news for Donald Trump, which probably stings when you consider that he's a malignant narcissist who cares only about what people think of him. Well, in a new Reuters Ipsos poll, one of the best in the business, his approval falls to 43%, the lowest since returning to office. So let's dig in deeper. Summary. According to Reuters, poll ratings sag as Americans worry about tariffs. Handling of the economy draws significant disapproval, and disapproval also for attack conversation on Signal app, Signalgate, aka Whiskey Leaks. So we're going to take a look at this. We're also going to play some other clips as well. And I should note, I believe that this predates or just comes on, like, barely meets when the Liberation Day tariffs were announced, right? So this is not quite the first big poll post tariffs, but the period occurred as Liberation Day approached. So I can't imagine what next week's polls are going to look like. But let's go. Trump's approval rating fell to 43%, the lowest since his return to office, as Americans soured on his tariff moves and his administration's handling of information about a military strike in Yemen, a Reuters Ipsos poll found. The three-day poll, which closed on Wednesday, showed approval of Trump's performance as president down 2 percentage points from a poll conducted March 21st through March 23rd, and 4 points below the 47% approval he had shortly after taking office on January 20th. Trump registered his highest first-term approval ratings, 49%, shortly after he took office in January 2017. His lowest first-term rating was 33% in December 2017. His overall approval remained stronger than it was for most of his first term. President Biden, Donald Trump's successor in the White House, had his lowest rating, 35%, just ahead of last November's presidential election. It's important to remember, as people beat up on President Biden, Biden at his most popular was far more popular than Donald Trump at his most popular, and even at his least popular was more popular than Donald Trump was at his least popular, okay? Respondents gave Trump poor marks for his handling of the economy, which 37% approved of. Yikes! With 30% approving of his work to address the high cost of living, an issue that dogged Biden. And I want to remind you that, again, for decades, Republicans have enjoyed a totally unjustified perception advantage on economic management. And Trump even more so, because he was considered the mimetic billionaire real estate mogul business genius, right? So he had 2 perception advantages going for him, and he has squandered them in about 3 months. Stunning. About half of respondents, 52%, agreed with a statement of that increasing tariffs on autos and auto parts, part of the new tariff push Trump was unveiling on Wednesday, will hurt people close to them. And about the same share said that the boosting tariffs would do more harm than good. About a third of Americans, largely from Trump's GOP, said they disagreed with the statements that tariffs would do more harm. Yikes. 52% of adults say increasing tariffs will have a negative impact. 57% say that Trump's moves to shake up the economy are too erratic. Trump has marshaled a whirlwind of policy changes since taking office, pushing out nearly 200,000 federal workers and upending longstanding American diplomatic norms. His tariff policies have spooked investors, leading to a sell-off in the stock market amid concerns that could trigger a recession. And again, J.P. Morgan, as a consequence of the global tariffs that Trump unleashed on Liberation Day, now has a chance of a recession at 60%. Respondents also faulted the Trump administration's handling of military secrets. Following the revelation last week, the senior leaders discussed plans for an attack on militants in Yemen on the commercially available Signal messaging app and inadvertently shared advanced plans with a journalist. Some 74% of respondents in the Reuters Ipsos poll, including 91% of Democrats and 55% of Republicans, said it was reckless to discuss the attack plans in this manner, compared with 22% who said it was a harmless oversight. Guarantee you most of those were Republicans. Another 70% agreed with a statement that Trump should accept responsibility for a matter. Ooh! Not just that it happened on his watch, but that it's his fault. Well, Reuters, let's see, adults on how they viewed the president's advisors using a group chat. Harmless is in orange and reckless is in blue or purple. 74%. Republicans are trying to hold the line. 41% saying, it's harmless. But, yikes, that's not good. Only 34% of respondents in the poll approved of Trump's handling of foreign policy, down from 37% in the March 21-23 Reuters Ipsos poll. Some 48% of respondents approved of his handling of immigration. So, devastating all the way around. And before we get to some of these clips, I just want to point out that since 538 has gone belly up, 538 founder, the controversial Nate Silver, who is a very well-known, perhaps the most famous poll aggregator and poll analyst in America, he has Trump down in aggregate by 3 percentage points. His disapproval is 3 percentage points higher than his approval rating. So again, Donald Trump is officially underwater. Now, with respect to the tariff situation, CNN's data analyst Harry Enton has some new information about this, and it's definitely worth our time.
S&P 500 drops of 5% or more at this point in a presidency. There are only two of them, right? There's Donald Trump, a 10% drop since he took office. The only one that matches it or exceeds it was George W. Bush back in 2001, a drop of 18%. This is it. This is the whole kit and caboodle since the S&P 500 was created as an index back in 1957. When you're one of two and we're talking about drops in the stock market, All
right. Well, what makes this presidential plunge different than all other presidential plunges, except for the fact that we reclined at this plunge?
Exactly right. We're right on the eve of Passover, so why not go with that? Again, we're going to look at these drops of 5% plus. What is so different about this versus the Bush plunge? Remember, it was the dot-com bubble, right? That was happening before George W. Bush took office. What did Donald Trump inherit? He inherited a bull market from Joe Biden. Donald Trump is the only one to take a bull market and turn it into a bear market to such a degree that we're having a drop of 5% or more at this point. This is historically unprecedented. What Donald Trump, one man, it seems to me, has done to perhaps my favorite stock market index.
So we'll stop right there for just a second because this is really, really important. One of the prevailing myths about Donald Trump, or at least prior to here recently, was this idea that he single-handedly created a great economy when he was elected president in 2016. And then, of course, he was inaugurated in January 2017. And the metaphor I always use is of that of construction, okay? So let's rewind the tape. When Donald Trump was inaugurated, he'd inherited a pretty good economy from Barack Obama, who inherited a really bad economy from George W. Bush, who inherited a really good economy from President Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton leaves a skyscraper in progress. Okay, it's under construction. It's like, say, 100 stories high. And at the end of Bush's second term, he triggered the Great Recession, and the whole thing collapses. So the skyscraper in progress collapses at the end of George Bush's presidency, and we have a gaping pit in the ground and rubble. And it takes President Obama 2 terms, and it's a relatively slow recovery, but he gets there. It's I forget how many, 72 months of consecutive growth, something like that, where he slowly rebuilds the skyscraper again. Okay? And then he hands off this skyscraper under construction to Donald Trump. And by the end of Donald Trump's 4th year in office, the skyscraper collapsed again into a pit with rubble. That's what President Biden inherited from Donald Trump. And so again, in 4 years, Joe Biden gets the skyscraper back up 100 stories, still under construction. Donald Trump wins the 2024 election. And so once again, Donald Trump is inheriting a really promising project under construction, and in less than 3 months, he seems to be doing everything in his power to once again reduce it to a hole in the ground with rubble. Donald Trump twice has inherited good economies, bear economies, from inheriting bull economies. He's turning now into a bear economy. He's inheriting bull economies from his Democratic predecessors that he's turning into a bear economy, that he is devastating with his own mismanagement. This idea that everything was terrible and just Trump emerged from the cosmic void and snapped his fingers and single-handedly created the economy from 2017 until, February 2020. And then you just can't count basically the rest of the Trump's last year in office. That doesn't count. But they hold COVID against President Biden. It's just bullshit. It's just Donald Trump is, when it comes to the merits, his policies suck, his economic management sucks, and it's being proven once again in real time, this time much earlier than in term one, which might explain this disastrous polling. Not good, and Democrats should continue to ruthlessly pounce on this. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.